The stars above Zareth Prime shimmered cold and distant, like diamonds scattered across a black ocean. Yet their light brought no comfort to the fragile inhabitants of the planet below. Zareth Prime, once a jewel of verdant forest and sparkling cities, now lay in ruins. Cities were crumbled. Towers that had once touched the clouds now lay in jagged piles. Smoke rose from the streets, curling into the toxic sky, carrying the acrid scent of fear and fire. The Tyrannid Collective had come, a relentless force that showed no mercy, no hesitation. And the Zarithians, delicate beings with translucent skin and fragile frames, trembled under the shadow of extinction. In the palace of glass and light, where the leaders had once gathered to celebrate peace and art, only silence remained. The council chambers were empty, abandoned in haste, the floors streaked with the ash of destroyed homes. One lone figure, Elder Vera, struggled to maintain her composure as she prepared the final transmission. Her hands shook over the console, but she pressed on, knowing it was the only chance they had. Her voice, calm but quivering with desperation, echoed through the empty halls as she broadcast the plea into the vastness of space. "Help. Anyone. Please," she whispered. "We do not ask for victory. Only for survival." The message, a fragile spark of hope, drifted through the void, carried across light years to distant worlds. It was a whisper, almost too faint to matter, and yet somewhere in the void, it was received. On Earth, aboard the orbiting command vessel Ironfang, the transmission appeared on the central monitors. Captain Jara Voss studied it quietly, her sharp eyes scanning every detail. Her crew, hardened warriors bred from worlds where survival was forged in pain, watched silently as she processed the data. No one spoke. Words were not necessary. "Another hopeless system," Jara said finally, her voice low, almost casual. Yet there was a spark of anticipation in her tone. She had seen countless worlds plead for help, and she had seen countless empires fall because they underestimated humans. "They don't know what's coming." Her crew, a diverse mix of Deathworld veterans, nodded with quiet agreement. Every human on that ship had grown up in environments that would have killed ordinary beings. Acid rain, magnetic storms, constant volcanic eruptions, brutal predators. These were their childhood playgrounds. To them, fear was a tool, danger a companion, and survival an instinct honed sharper than any weapon. Jara leaned back, the glow of the monitors reflecting off her scarred face. "Plot a course," she ordered. "Zareth Prime, prepare for drop. They asked for help, but we don't come quietly." The crew moved with the fluid efficiency of predators. Every action was precise, every movement deliberate. Weapons were checked, engines powered, tactics reviewed. Their communication was sparse, almost telepathic, born from years of shared battles on planets that seemed determined to kill them at every step. As the Ironfang left Earth orbit, a calm tension filled the bridge. The stars stretched into streaks as faster-than-light drives engaged, and the human fleet leapt into the black. They were silent, focused, and utterly unafraid. For humans, the universe was a challenge, and no challenge had ever been insurmountable. Back on Zareth Prime, the sky darkened as the Tyrannid dreadnoughts advanced. The ground trembled under the approach of the massive ships, and the Zarithians hid wherever they could. Children clutched their mothers' hands, elders muttered prayers, and the streets were empty of hope. The Tyrannid Collective moved as a single, unthinking organism, consuming everything in its path. Civilization had no chance, at least that was what the galaxy had come to believe. And yet, through the black void, a new force approached. The first streaks of human gunmetal appeared against the distant stars, shining faintly in the darkness. They were not diplomatic, they were not cautious, they were humans, born of worlds that had been designed to break them and failed. On Zareth Prime, a young girl named Lyra peered from the ruins of her home. She had seen the Tyrannids destroy everything she had ever known. Her eyes wide and full of fear, caught the faint glint of approaching ships. Who is that?" she whispered to her brother, barely audible over the roar of distant engines. Her brother, older but no braver, shook his head. I don't know, but maybe help has come." Inside the human fleet, Captain Jara smiled faintly. She felt no pity, no excitement, only anticipation. These Tyrannid ships, massive and arrogant, believed themselves unstoppable. They had no idea what was about to greet them. "Let them see us," she said quietly. "Let them understand who stands before them. We are not negotiators. We are not saviors. We are predators of survival." And we will not fail. The crew understood immediately. They had been trained for this, bred for this, and every instinct in their bodies screamed in readiness. Weapons glowed, engines roared, and the fleet moved like a storm descending upon a fragile world. Lyra and the other Zerithians looked to the sky, hearts racing. Somewhere beyond the stars, hope had arrived, not gentle, not kind, but terrifying and unstoppable. The humans were coming, and the galaxy, so used to the Tyranids' reign of terror, would soon realize that Earth's Deathworlders were unlike anything they had ever faced. And so, the first chapter of salvation and reckoning began. The silent plea of a dying world had been heard, and in the distance among the black of space the hunters approached. The Zerithians had never seen anything like it. At first they thought it was a trick of light, a reflection off the dust and debris of their burning cities. Then the ships came into focus, slicing through the darkness of space like silver blades. They were human vessels, sleek, dark, and terrifyingly precise. Not a single ship faltered. Not a single weapon misfired. On the surface, Elder Vera's hands shook as she pointed toward the horizon. They are real, she whispered. The Zerithians, fragile and timid, had waited for allies for countless generations. But no one had ever come. And now before them, a fleet unlike any they had imagined appeared, cutting across the black void with deadly purpose. The Tyranid dreadnoughts, massive and grotesque, hovered above Zareth Prime, their many appendages and clawed weaponry poised for destruction. Their commanders were certain the humans would be no challenge, mere prey for the collective. They had dominated countless worlds, crushed civilizations that had begged for mercy and left nothing but ash. The arrival of these human ships, however, caused an unfamiliar tension to ripple across their ranks. Unknown vessels approaching, hissed one Tyranid officer, his voice trembling, clawed fingers flying over the controls. They should not exist. Deploy the interceptors. But the humans were already moving faster than the Tyranid sensors could track. They twisted and turned through the void with uncanny coordination. Every human ship seemed to anticipate the Tyranid maneuvers before they were even made. Plasma lances, ion cannons, and laser turrets fired with surgical precision, striking the edges of Tyranid shields. For the first time in centuries, the Tyranid collective felt hesitation. Captain Jara Voss watched from the Iron Fang, her eyes cold but alive with the thrill of the hunt. Open fire, she said, her voice calm, almost gentle but deadly. Let them learn fear. Her orders were executed instantly. The human fleet, trained on the deadliest worlds Earth had ever known, moved like one living organism. They were not a fleet of ships. They were predators of the void. Each strike, each maneuver carried the weight of planets that had tried to kill them and failed. Below, the Zerithians could only stare. Children clung to parents, hiding behind walls that offered no protection. Adults fell to their knees, praying for a miracle. And then, as if a storm had descended, the humans struck. A Tyranid interceptor ship exploded in a flash of orange fire, scattering debris across the darkness. Another was shredded mid-flight by a volley of plasma from human guns. The dreadnoughts, which had inspired fear across the galaxy, faltered. Shields flickered, weapons misfired, and panic began to spread among their ranks. Lyra, the young girl hiding beneath a ruined wall, gasped. They are fighting. And winning, she whispered. Her brother's eyes widened in disbelief. No one can fight them like that, right? They are not like anyone we know, said the elder standing nearby, his voice trembling. These humans, they are something else. On the Iron Fang, Yara's crew operated like extensions of her mind. Every human ship in the fleet knew the drills, the formations, the ways of killing that had been honed for generations. And every move was calculated to protect Zareth Prime. They were predators, yes, but not reckless ones. They destroyed the invaders with purpose, precision, and terrifying efficiency. The Tyranid flagship tried to pull back, retreating toward the void to regroup. But the humans were faster. Boarding pods fired from their ships, carrying Deathworlders who thrived in conditions that would have killed any ordinary life. They entered the flagship without hesitation. The Tyranid soldiers inside were met with creatures that moved like shadows and struck like storms, bodies tough as steel and will unbreakable. The Zerithians watched in awe as the battle unfolded. Smoke and light filled the void, the black sky above Zareth Prime alive with the fire of war. For the first time in living memory, hope was visible. It was not gentle or polite. It was raw, unstoppable and terrifyingly beautiful. Captain Jara's voice echoed through the Iron Fang. Keep pushing. They will learn the cost of underestimating Earth's children. A Tyranid warlord screamed into his communications, uncomprehending. How can they survive this? Our fleets, our numbers. We are unmatched, but the humans did not care about numbers. They cared about survival. They cared about protecting the helpless. They cared about proving that Earth's Deathworlders were a force that no one could ignore. On the surface, Xerithians began to step into the open. Children peeked from behind debris. Elders emerged trembling, and the once fearful citizens dared to lift their heads to the sky. They watched as the humans, relentless and unyielding, tore through the Tyranid ranks with a precision and ruthlessness that left nothing standing. Lyra held her brother's hand tightly, tears in her eyes. They are monsters, she whispered, but good monsters, and she was right. The humans were terrifying, yes, but they were the only hope this world had left. Their arrival was not an accident. It was an answer to a silent prayer, a promise that life, no matter how fragile, could be defended. The Tyranid forces reeled, their confidence shattered. They had never faced a predator like this, and as the humans pressed forward, moving through the void like a storm incarnate, the Xerithians understood something profound. Help had come, but it was nothing like they had imagined. These were no saviors in shining armor. These were Earth's Deathworlders, and they were unstoppable. The Tyranid fleet had never known hesitation. For centuries, they had been unstoppable, consuming everything in their path without thought or remorse. Entire civilizations had fallen to their claws in plasma. Entire worlds had burned, and yet the Tyranid command had always believed they were invincible. Until now. Now before them, a force they could not comprehend moved with terrifying efficiency. The human fleet was unlike anything the Tyranids had encountered. It was not just the weapons, the plasma lances, the ion cannons, the missiles that shocked them. It was the way the humans moved, as if the enemy's thoughts were already known. Each maneuver seemed preordained, precise, and utterly lethal. Every strike was perfectly timed, every retreat covered by another attack. Impossible, hissed one Tyranid officer aboard the flagship Vorik Doomclaw. His claws shook as he pressed over the controls, trying to adjust his fleet's trajectory. They should not survive this. They are weak, fragile. They cannot endure the void like we can. But they did. And they were. On board the Iron Fang, Captain Jara Voss observed the chaos unfolding with calm focus. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the Tyranid formations, noting their weaknesses. Her voice, low and firm, carried across the comms. They underestimate us. Let's make them regret it. The human ships responded instantly. Squadrons split and swarmed, weaving through the Tyranid lines. Their weapons struck with precision, tearing apart shields and hulls before the Tyranids could react. When the Tyranids counterattacked, they found empty space where human ships had been only moments before. It was a dance of death, choreographed by instinct and honed by the harshest worlds Earth had ever produced. Below on Zareth Prime, the fragile citizens pressed against the ruins of their homes, eyes wide as they witnessed the impossible. They cannot be human, muttered an elder. Humans are fragile. They cannot survive, yet they fight as though the universe itself obeys them. Children clung to their parents, trembling, yet a flicker of hope glimmered in their eyes. Lyra, the young girl who had first glimpsed the human ships, whispered, They are saving us, even if they are monsters. Her brother nodded silently, unable to find words for the awe that struck him. The Tyranid commanders barked orders, desperation creeping into their movements. Concentrate fire on the largest ships, one screamed. We must destroy their leaders. But the humans anticipated this. The Iron Fang shifted formation seamlessly, drawing fire while smaller human ships struck the flanks of the Tyranid assault. Each volley of plasma and missile fire tore through Tyranid ranks, leaving gaping holes in ships that had been deemed indestructible. Fear, a sensation the Tyranids had never truly known, began to spread. A junior Tyranid officer, barely more than a hatchling in rank, looked at the carnage and whispered, We are losing. How is this possible? They are ordinary creatures. They were not ordinary. The humans of Earth's death worlds were anything but ordinary. They had been forged in worlds that would have killed the most resilient species in hours. Acid rains, storms of magnetic energy, predators that could shred flesh in a heartbeat. These were their playgrounds. Survival was not instinct. It was a way of life honed sharper than any blade or laser, and now, that life force had manifested in space as a storm of war and fury. As the battle raged, the Tyranid flagship tried a desperate maneuver, attempting to flee into the darkness to regroup. But the humans pursued with relentless tenacity. Boarding pods fired, carrying warriors who laughed at the void's emptiness. When they entered the Tyranid vessels, the soldiers inside were met with beings that moved like shadows, struck like lightning, and fought with the ferocity of worlds that refused to die. Zarithians watched in disbelief from their hiding places. Smoke and fire illuminated the night sky, but it was the humans who commanded the spectacle. Elder Vera, tears in her eyes, whispered to herself, These are no saviors. They are monsters, and they are ours." Lyra, holding her brother's hand, felt a strange mixture of fear and awe. They are unstoppable," she said, her voice trembling. "And they are here for us. The humans were indeed here for them. But they were not gentle. They did not ask for gratitude or loyalty. They were hunters, predators, and protectors rolled into one. Their eyes were cold, their movements precise, and yet in their ferocity lay a kind of justice. The kind that only those who had endured the deadliest worlds could understand. Jara's voice cut through the comms once more. Calm, unwavering, and terrifyingly certain. They asked for help. They got it. Let's finish this. The Tyranid forces, which had crushed planets without effort, now faltered under the relentless human assault. The once confident warships burned, exploded, and drifted lifelessly into the void. For the first time, the Tyranid collective realized that it had encountered something it could not simply overpower, something that did not bend, break, or flee, something that fought with the fury of entire worlds behind it. As the humans pressed forward, the Zarithians stepped out from their hiding places. They saw hulking, battle-scarred ships moving like shadows across the void. They saw their enemies tremble for the first time, and they understood in a way words could not capture that hope had finally arrived. The humans were terrifying. They were monsters. They were unstoppable, and they had come to save the fragile, trembling world of Zareth Prime. The Tyranid dreadnoughts had come to Zareth Prime with arrogance, convinced of their supremacy. Entire civilizations had crumbled before them, and they had never known fear. Yet now in the vastness of space something was different. Something unthinkable had appeared. A force that moved with precision, patience, and lethal intent. The humans of Earth's Deathworlds had arrived. Captain Yara Voss stood on the bridge of the Iron Fang, her gaze fixed on the chaos unfolding before them. Her crew operated with an almost eerie synchronization, each ship moving as if it were part of a single living organism. Plasma cannons tore through the Tyranid shields, laser turrets sliced through the hulls, and missiles found gaps in defenses no one thought possible. The Tyranids fought back, but their attacks were disjointed, reactive, ineffective. They were fighting ghosts, shadows, and storms that could think faster than they could react. "Focus on the flagship," Jara ordered, her voice calm but cold. "We cut its wings and the rest will scatter." The human fleet obeyed without hesitation. Squadrons swarmed around the Tyranid flagship, striking its vulnerable points from angles no conventional tactician would attempt. Boarding pods shot into the enemy ship, carrying human warriors who had been forged on worlds of fire, acid, and storms. Inside, the Tyranid soldiers met death incarnate, creatures that could endure wounds that would have killed an ordinary being, whose strikes were precise and merciless. The flagship shuddered under the relentless assault, shields flickering as hull breaches spread like veins of fire. The Tyranid commander bellowed orders, but his crew was already falling apart. Panic, confusion, and fear spread like a contagion. The collective that had never known weakness now trembled. Below, on the surface of Zareth Prime, the citizens watched the battle unfold in awe and disbelief. The sky above their ruined cities was filled with fire and streaks of human gunmetal, each explosion a testament to the humans' terrifying skill. Elder Vera, standing atop a collapsed tower, whispered, "They are monsters, yet they are saving us." Lyra clung to her brother, her small hands trembling. They are unstoppable," she whispered. Her brother nodded silently, unable to find words for the awe and hope surging in his chest. For the first time in living memory, the Zarithians felt that survival was possible. In the void, the tide of battle had turned. Tyranid ships that had once inspired fear now drifted in flames, their once confident formations broken. Smaller warships were cut down before they could even react. The humans pressed forward relentlessly, exploiting every weakness, leaving no room for the enemy to regroup. Jara's eyes glinted as she watched the flagship falter. They thought numbers and size would save them. They didn't account for skill. They didn't account for Earth's children. The Tyranid commander realized too late that his tactics were meaningless. Every move the humans made seemed inevitable, as if the outcome had been written across the stars. Desperation flared, but the humans anticipated every attempt to escape. The boarding pods reached the flagship's interior, and the Deathworlders struck with terrifying precision. Tyranid soldiers, who had faced death countless times, fell screaming to creatures that could take unimaginable punishment and keep moving, killing with unflinching focus. Even the junior Tyranid officers, who had only recently been promoted, began to understand the horror of their predicament. How can they survive this? One whispered, staring at the tactical readouts. Their bodies, they should be broken. Their ships, they should be burning. They are not ordinary, another hissed. They are predators. The humans were indeed predators, but not in the way the Tyranids understood. They did not hunt for pleasure or domination. They hunted to survive, to protect, to fulfill the unyielding drive that had forged them on Earth's deadliest worlds. Every strike, every maneuver was born of instinct sharpened by necessity. Every action was a promise. The helpless would be defended and the enemy would pay in full. As the flagship's hull ruptured, alarms blaring, Tyranid forces scattered into the void. Smaller groups tried to flee, but the human fleet was everywhere at once. No route was safe. No ship could escape. The humans pursued relentlessly, their tactics brutal but precise. Fire streaked across the void, and the Tyranids, who had always been feared, now trembled before creatures they could not comprehend. The Zerithians, watching from the ruins, began to step out of hiding. They saw their tormentors falling and the humans standing tall amidst the destruction. Some wept openly. Others fell to their knees, mouths open in silent prayers of gratitude. The world they had believed lost was alive again, though scarred and battered. Hope, fragile but undeniable, had returned. Jara's voice rang over the comms. Keep pushing. They will learn the cost of underestimating Earth's Deathworlders. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to survive, and to protect those who cannot fight for themselves. Even in the midst of carnage, the humans showed no hubris. They were hunters, yes, but disciplined hunters. Each crew member moved as though every life on Zareth Prime depended on their precision. And it did. The Tyranid flagship, now a shattered husk drifting helplessly, finally began to crumble under the relentless assault. The humans had achieved what the galaxy had believed impossible. They had broken the invincible, shattered the unstoppable, and turned despair into hope. On the surface, Lyra and the Zerithians understood the truth. These humans were terrifying. They were monsters of war, born of worlds that should have killed them, yet here they were, delivering salvation in a storm of fire and steel. They were Earth's Deathworlders, unstoppable, unyielding, and relentless. And they had come for them. The tide had turned. The once hopeless battle for Zareth Prime was no longer about survival alone. It was about vengeance, justice, and the terrifying brilliance of humans who would not be denied. The Tyranid collective had never faced a foe like this. Their dreadnoughts, massive and powerful, had always inspired terror across the galaxy. Entire civilizations had fallen beneath their claws, fire, and plasma. Yet here they were, faltering, disoriented, terrified by creatures they could neither predict nor crush. The humans of Earth's Deathworlds moved with a precision and ferocity that broke their ranks like glass under a hammer. Captain Jara Voss observed from the bridge of the Iron Fang, eyes narrowing as she tracked the remaining enemy forces. She didn't smile. Humans didn't celebrate victory the way weaker species did. They didn't need applause or recognition. Their satisfaction was quiet, built into the knowledge that they had done what must be done and that no one would survive to forget it. Final assault patterns ready, she said, her voice calm, steady, and cold. We take the flagship down. We leave none of them standing. Her crew responded instantly. Every ship in the fleet shifted, a coordinated storm of fire and steel. Squadrons swarmed the remaining Tyranid ships, striking at engines, shields, and weapon arrays simultaneously. Missiles streaked through the void, plasma burned through armor, and human pilots moved with unerring instinct. anticipating the enemy before it even realized it was under attack. The Tyranid flagship, the heart of the fleet, struggled to maintain formation. Alarms blared, hull plates melted under the human onslaught, and panic spread like wildfire among its crew. The commander, once arrogant and sure, now barked orders in a voice trembling with disbelief. "Focus on the humans. Destroy them before they reach the capital vessel." But it was too late. The humans had already anticipated this move. Boarding pods launched like spears into the flagship's interior, carrying Deathworlders whose very bodies seemed forged to endure the impossible. Tyranid soldiers met them with claws and fangs, but the humans struck with efficiency and precision no Tyranid had ever seen. Inside the flagship, chaos erupted. Tyranid officers screamed as their subordinates fell one by one. Hallways that had once been crawling with soldiers now lay silent, bloodied and broken. The humans moved with terrifying grace, their strikes swift and unhesitating. Each Deathworlder was a predator, and the Tyranids, so long apex hunters, were now prey. On Zareth Prime, the Zarithians watched the void above in awe and fear. The sky was ablaze with fire and energy, but it was not the Tyranids who dominated it. It was the humans. Elder Vera, standing atop the highest ruins of the city, whispered, They are unstoppable. They are monsters, but they are ours." Children peeked from broken walls, hiding behind rubble, yet unable to look away. Lyra clutched her brother's hand tightly. They are saving us, and destroying everything that hurt us," she said, her voice trembling with awe. The humans pressed onward, relentless. The flagship's engines faltered under concentrated fire. Its shields shattered, its weapons destroyed. The Deathworlders' boarding squads had claimed control of the interior. Every system they destroyed, every officer they struck, was a message. Earth's humans were not to be underestimated. Captain Jara's voice cut through the comms again, cold and resolute. "Sweep the remaining vessels. No survivors. No exceptions." The Tyranid forces, seeing their command structure destroyed, began to scatter into the void. Smaller vessels attempted to flee, but the human fleet was everywhere at once, converging on the escape paths, cutting off retreat. Every ship that tried to leave was met with plasma fire, missiles, or boarding teams. The Tyranids had once been feared across light years. Now they were terrified. Inside the flagship, the final confrontation unfolded. The Tyranid commander, a massive creature with armored plating and clawed limbs, confronted the human boarding team. He swung his claws, snapping metal and bone, but the humans were faster, stronger, and unflinching. They moved like shadows, striking with weapons and fists, enduring blows that would have killed lesser beings. Finally, the Tyranid commander fell, his body collapsing amid sparks and blood. The flagship shuddered and broke apart, hull plates rupturing and sending debris spiraling into the void. The remaining Tyranid ships, seeing their leader destroyed, had no choice but to flee, or be annihilated. The human fleet did not pursue further than necessary. They did not celebrate. They did not gloat. They moved with the silent precision of predators who had done what was necessary and nothing more. On the surface, the Zarithians emerged from hiding. Smoke rose from the ruined cities, but the humans had done what none had believed possible. They had saved the planet. Citizens, fragile and trembling, knelt in the streets, weeping with relief and gratitude. Children laughed through tears, seeing hope where there had been only despair. Elder Vera approached the humans who had descended from their ships to inspect the city. Her hands shook as she reached toward them, and she whispered, We owe you our lives. We thought all was lost. You have saved us." Captain Jara looked at her, her expression unreadable. "We did what had to be done," she said simply. "We do not need thanks. Survival is our way, and yours is worth defending." Lyra, her small face streaked with soot and tears, looked up at the humans. "You are terrifying, but you saved us," she said softly. Her brother nodded beside her, speechless, eyes wide with awe. The Zarithians would never forget this day. They had been on the brink of annihilation, their world shattered by monsters that could have destroyed them, and yet something even fiercer had come. The humans were monsters, yes, terrifying, unstoppable, relentless, but they were monsters who protected life. As the human fleet lifted back into the void, engines blazing against the blackness of space, Captain Jara Voss watched the horizon. She did not smile, for there was no time for joy. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of fragile civilizations. Somewhere another call would come, and when it did, humanity would answer. Not as diplomats, not as heroes, but as the predators of survival. Zareth Prime, battered, scarred, and trembling, would live. And the legend of Earth's Deathworlders, monsters who could not be stopped, would echo across the galaxy for generations. The reckoning was complete. The battle was over, but the air above Zareth Prime still carried the smoke of destruction. Sitisla. In ruins, streets were strewn with debris, and the once pristine skies were streaked with the scars of fire and plasma. Yet despite the devastation, life had survived. Life had endured, and for the Zarithians that survival was a miracle, one that had arrived in the form of humans unlike any they had ever imagined. On the ground, Elder Vera moved cautiously toward the human landing teams. She had expected monsters, but what she saw was something even more terrifying. Hulking, scarred warriors, their bodies bearing the marks of survival from worlds that would have killed ordinary beings without hesitation. Their eyes were sharp, calculating, yet within them lay a strange, quiet focus, a calm born of centuries of surviving the deadliest conditions imaginable. One of the humans approached her, a giant figure with armor scratched and scorched from battle. He did not bow, did not make grand gestures, but his presence was commanding. "We did what was necessary," Captain Jaravos said simply. Her voice was low even and carried the weight of authority. "Your survival is worth it. Nothing else matters." Vera's hands trembled as she bowed slightly. We cannot thank you enough. You saved our world, our lives." Jara shook her head. "No thanks are needed. Survival is all that matters. We do not fight for glory, only to endure." "You asked for help," we answered. The Zarithians watched the humans with awe. To them, these beings were monsters of legend, hulking, terrifying, relentless. Yet those same beings had risked everything to defend life, to protect the helpless, and to destroy the seemingly invincible Tyranid fleet. Children peeked from behind rubble, their eyes wide with fear and admiration. Lyra, clutching her brother's hand, stepped forward. You are humans?" she asked, her voice small but filled with wonder. "You survived. And you saved us." Jara crouched slightly to meet her gaze. "Yes," she said simply. "We are humans, and we do not give up no matter the odds." The Zarithians were eager to understand, to learn about these monsters who had become their saviors. Elder Vera asked cautiously, "Your world, your people, how can you endure such dangers? You are not like any race we know." Jara's eyes darkened slightly as she looked toward the horizon. "Our worlds are harsh. Death is always near. Acid rain, storms that rip through cities, predators that can kill with a single strike. These are the things we grow up with. Survival is instinct. It is training. It is life itself. And because of that, we are ready for anything the universe throws at us." The Zarithians gasped. They had never imagined a species could be so resilient, so unyielding. The humans' calm presence, even after annihilating a fleet of seemingly unstoppable monsters, left them both terrified and inspired. One of the Zarithian children, emboldened by curiosity, stepped closer. Do you ever rest? Do you ever feel fear?" Jara's lips curved faintly, almost a smile. "Fear exists," she admitted, "but it does not stop us. It sharpens us. It teaches us to survive, and when others are in danger, fear becomes irrelevant. Protecting life, that becomes the only thing that matters." The Zarithians began to understand. These humans were terrifying not because of cruelty but because of discipline, focus, and unbreakable will. They had fought monsters that no other race could touch and had emerged victorious, not for fame, not for conquest, but because life itself was sacred to them. Elder Vera looked around at the ruins of her city, then back at the humans. "We have lived in despair for generations," she said softly. "We thought our world was lost, but you have given us hope." Jara nodded. "Hope is fragile. It must be defended. Today, you have survived because we were here. Tomorrow, you must continue to survive, learn, grow, adapt. That is the way life endures." The Zarithians began to emerge from the shadows of their broken cities, timid but determined. They helped the wounded, tended to the fires, and slowly, cautiously began to rebuild. The humans did not interfere. Their mission was complete. They had fought, destroyed the threat, and ensured life endured. That was all they required. Lyra and her brother followed the humans to the edge of the city, their eyes wide with awe. You are like legends, she whispered. No one in the galaxy will ever forget you. Jara's gaze softened for a moment. Legends are stories, she said. We are just humans, and humans fight to survive. That is all. Yet despite her words, the impact of their presence was undeniable. The humans had arrived when hope was nearly gone. They had faced a fleet of monsters and shattered it completely. They had shown the Zerithians a way forward, a path of survival and resilience that was both terrifying and inspiring. As the humans prepared to leave, Elder Vera spoke once more. Will you return if we ever call? Jara looked at her calmly. If life is in danger, we will answer. But remember, your survival depends on your will to endure. We can only show the way. You must walk it yourself. The Zerithians bowed deeply. They had not only been saved, but had been shown a standard of courage, endurance, and relentless determination they had never known existed. And as the human fleet lifted back into the void, engines blazing against the black of space, the galaxy itself seemed to whisper a warning. Underestimate Earth's Deathworlders at your peril. Lyra watched them vanish into the stars, tears in her eyes. They are terrifying. And wonderful, she said softly. Her brother nodded silently, his heart full of hope for the first time in his life. The humans had given Zareth Prime more than survival. They had given them understanding that life, no matter how fragile, was worth defending, and that Earth's Deathworlders were a force unlike any other in the galaxy. And somewhere among the stars, Captain Jara Voss and her fleet moved onward, ready to answer the next call, silent, relentless, unstoppable. The skies above Zareth Prime were clearing. Smoke and ash still lingered, but the worst had passed. The Tyranid fleet was broken, scattered, and no longer a threat to the fragile planet. Across the battered cities, the Zerithians emerged from hiding, cautious but alive. Their eyes were wide, filled with wonder, fear, and gratitude. They had survived because humans had come, a force so terrifying and unstoppable that the galaxy itself would never be the same. Captain Jara Voss stood on the bridge of the Iron Fang, watching the planet slowly come back to life from orbit. She didn't celebrate. There was no joy in victory for her kind, only the quiet satisfaction of a mission completed. Humans did not fight for glory. They fought to endure. They fought to ensure life could continue no matter how fragile. And for today, life had survived. The Zerithians approached the landing zones cautiously. Elder Vera, her hands still trembling, walked alongside the young children and adults who had survived the carnage. Their steps were hesitant, unsure if the humans were still predators or now guardians. The answer became clear as they saw the human warriors moving among them, not taking, not commanding, but standing quietly. Ready if needed, Lyra, clutching her brother's hand, approached Captain Jara. Will you leave now? She asked softly, fear and hope mingling in her voice. Jara looked down at her expression calm and unyielding. Yes, she said. We cannot stay. There are other worlds that will call for help, other lives that are in danger. But remember this, survival is not a gift we give. It is a choice you must make every day. You must endure. You must fight, and if you do, life will continue. The children's eyes filled with tears, and the elders bowed deeply. They had witnessed something no Zerithian had ever imagined. Monsters who fought not for conquest, not for glory, but for the survival of others. They had seen humans forged on the deadliest world stand against an enemy that had never known defeat, and win. On the surface, repairs began almost immediately. Citizens helped one another, clearing rubble, tending the wounded, salvaging what they could. They moved with a newfound determination, inspired by the humans' example. For the first time in generations, hope was tangible, alive and burning in their hearts. Above them, the human fleet prepared to depart. Engines hummed, weapons cooled, and boarding pods were recalled. Captain Jara surveyed her crew, each member silent, disciplined, and alert. There was no pride in their eyes, only focus. They were Deathworlders, born to endure, trained to survive, and always ready for the next call. Set course for the next system, Jara commanded. Her voice was steady, carrying across the bridge. There will be others who need us, and we will not fail them. As the fleet lifted, the Zerithians watched from the ground. The humans ascended into the black of space, disappearing among the stars like shadows that had passed through their world. Children waved, elders bowed. and even the smallest among them understood the enormity of what had occurred. The humans were gone, but the legacy of their presence would remain forever. Elder Vera turned to the gathered citizens. "They are terrifying," she said quietly, voice trembling. "They are monsters of strength and fury. Yet they saved us. They showed us what it means to endure, to fight, and to protect life. We owe them more than we can ever repay." Lyra held her brother's hand tightly. "Will they come back?" she asked. "If we need them again?" Vera shook her head slowly. "Perhaps. But you must remember what they taught us. Survival is not given, it is earned. We must protect our world. We must honor what they did for us." Across the galaxy, the story of Earth's Deathworlders began to spread. Fleets and civilizations whispered their name in awe and fear. The Tyranids, who had once inspired terror across